I'm here on Smithbury Street in Nottingham, where police are investigating the suspected murder of 52-year-old Mrs. Sarah Peters. They have arrested her husband John, and local residents are shocked, describing him to me as a pillar of the community. When I first got here, there were concerns about their daughter Julie and grandson Kyle, who live here too, having moved in 6 months ago after a divorce, although I've since heard they're safe. A neighbour told me she remembered Sarah as a chatty woman, although she hadn't seen her since she'd been diagnosed with early onset dementia and that she was getting visits from carers. It's safe to say this is a neighbourhood in deep shock. And I'll hand you back to the studio.
Roughly 2/3 of domestic homicide victims are women, and the majority are killed by a partner or ex-partner, with the remainder killed by another relative or household member. This occurs across all cultures and ages. About half of intimate partner homicides include dependent children in the family structure. In approximately 3/4 of cases where victims or perpetrators presented to agencies with possible signs of domestic abuse and/or violence, this was not recognised or explored further. A lack of professional curiosity is often cited as a factor for this, as well as in other safeguarding reviews. Professional curiosity is the ability to explore and understand what is happening with a family, child, or adult. It is about not accepting a situation as it appears, especially if it does not feel right. It requires practitioners to act upon their safeguarding responsibilities, rather than make assumptions or take matters at face value. A curious professional will inquire by looking, listening, and proactively questioning and challenging all those involved. In the Domestic Homicide Review for Sarah, a lack of professional curiosity was identified as a recurrent theme. John Peters had visited his GP twice in the 6 months prior to Sarah's murder to talk about difficulties in his relationship, but he wasn't asked on either occasion about the wider context. When carers visited Sarah, there was occasionally an uncomfortable atmosphere, and John tended to answer questions addressed to Sarah. One of the carers did once ask John to leave, and when he refused, she just accepted it, as showing him to be a supportive partner. Kyle's increasingly unusual behaviour at school, including sometimes seeming reluctant to go home, was noted by a couple of teachers. They asked how things were at home with Mum, but never questioned how things were with the grandparents and never raised it with the designated safeguarding lead. There are many potential barriers that prevent professional curiosity. Some of them include making assumptions or confirmation bias, which is the tendency to process information by looking for or interpreting information that fits your existing beliefs. In this case, teachers assumed Carl's behaviour was just about missing his dad, and that he was unhappy having to live with his grandparents and share a bedroom with his mum. The teachers did not recognise Carl's changing character over the 6 months he'd lived with his grandparents because it didn't fit with their presumptions. Both GPs that saw John also made assumptions that, as he was talking to them about problems in the relationship, he was likely to be the victim. Some of the carers, despite having a gut feeling that something wasn't right, including that John rarely let Sarah speak, just assumed it was because he was overprotective, nor was it ever recorded. But being brave and having difficult conversations is an important part in being professionally curious and providing effective safeguarding. Professional curiosity is about being respectfully nosy, being open-minded and not taking everything at face value, thinking the unthinkable, believing the unbelievable. We will never know if professionals had been curious, if they'd asked the next question, whether there would have been a different outcome for Sarah. For more information about being professionally curious, please read our 7-minute briefing.